Today's horror story is written by Orphanology. Picking up dead things is a shitty way to make money, but it's not like I had better options. I was out of jail, living at my cousin Grant's place, waiting for him to lose patience with my freeloading ways, when he brought me news of the occupation. I had already half-heartedly applied at a couple of places, partly to stay in Grant's good graces, partly to satisfy the whims of my ignorant fucking probation officer. But every time I checked the box on the application that asked if you've ever committed a felony, I knew that was it. I wasn't getting any calls back from Stevie's Taco Emporium and Bait Shop, or whatever bullshit job I was applying at. Nobody was calling me at all. See, that's the thing. When they got 5 years of prison on you and they got you by the short hairs, you have to do whatever you can to get by. Grant really tried to sell me on the roadkill job. He was obsessed with getting me a paycheck.
Josh,
He'd tell me,
the real advantage of picking up dead deer is nobody gives a fuck about your checkered legal past. All they care about is when you get the call. Do you drive out, pick up the dead deer, and then drop it off at the county spot? If you can do that, you get $40 a deer and you'd set your own hours.
but you do have to pick up dead fucking animals, right? We were outside in his porch. It was Sunday, early spring. Grant didn't have work that day. He had graduated from freelance dead animal pickup to working a snow removal / road maintenance gig with the county, which meant no weekends for him.
This would be the kind of job you wear gloves.
I don't want to have a job where I'm wearing gloves, man. I opened another beer.
It's a way to get back on your feet. You can borrow my old truck. If you work solid for a few months, maybe you can get your own apartment or at least afford your own beer. Which will be convenient. You know, since I'm about to throw your ass out if all you keep doing is drinking all day and eating my groceries.
He said, politely ignoring the fact I wasn't really on my feet before I went in on a 5-year bid for manufacture / sale of controlled substances. I waited for him to laugh, and when he didn't, I decided to ask when I could start. The next few months went okay. Most days there was a dead deer somewhere, so most days I made at least $40. Usually, though, I picked up 2 or 3. I won't insult us both by doing the math. Suffice it to say, I usually paid for a case of domestic. There were, however, a couple of problems. Some were normal, logistical type problems. Grant's truck wouldn't start, I didn't have enough money for gas, my probation officer was being a fucking asshole. But some were a little weirder. The weirder one that kept happening was once or twice a month, I'd get a call about a dead deer. But when I show up, there would be nothing there. The weirder part? It was always the same place, always the same time. Forest Road right before it merges onto 74, always midday. At first I assumed I was wrong, got mixed up or something. But then it happened again and again. Dead deer, vanished deer, there never was a deer. Maybe some of them were fresh kills and someone else just picked it up. Free meat for a month, my own judge. But it never really felt like that. Every time I would drive out there, it just seemed wrong. I'd get out and the air would smell strange, like a storm was coming but not a cloud in the sky. Pressure was all wrong. So that was why I was in no hurry when I got a text about a dead deer on 74. Zero rush, actually. I finished the beer I was working on at the Blind Pig. The owner / bartender Steve was both a barbecue fanatic and struggling with glaucoma, and moseyed on out of the parking lot. I was still driving Grant's truck, and it was a real piece of shit. Just a terrible ride. Half the lights flashed on and off, seemingly at random on the dashboard, and the steering wheel shook if you took it over 40. But it was free, and it worked. Like me, I guess. I drove it out under blue skies and turned on the radio. It only got one station, the local AM gospel channel. I turned up As Long As I Got Jesus and sang along. 10 minutes later, I turned a corner, and where I thought there would be nothing, even though a dead deer got called in, lo and behold, there was a deer. I pulled over, threw my hazards on, They worked, but it was a slow blink and mostly only on one side. Better than nothing. Got out of the truck and cracked my knuckles. It was a hot morning for that time of year, early spring. Dandelion seeds in the air, the woods all around starting to turn a bright green after winter. In this part of town, the woods on both sides of the road were huge. State land. It went on forever. If you got lost out there, you were done. Nobody ever finds anybody who goes missing in those woods. I put on my heavy work gloves and stepped out of the truck. Nobody else was on the road. At 10 a.m., either everyone's already gone to work or school, and nobody's going anywhere for lunch. The rest of the populace, I assumed, was starting to day drink. The emptiness gave me the jitters. I've been in some weird, bad, violent scenes in my life, but the thing that always creeps me out the most is when a place that should be crowded is empty. I took a deep breath and walked over to the deer. I didn't want to see it. I hated seeing it. Dead deer suck. Even in the middle of nowhere where you get used to seeing them on the roads, it's still gross and sad. In the summer, they rot and burst in the sun, and in the winter, they freeze on the dead grass of the median. The whole walk to the body, I told myself the same thing I always told myself. I was doing a good thing, the right thing. Getting rid of this deer stops anyone else from seeing it. Nobody wants to see it. Plus, getting paid, I thought. Gotta get paid. The deer looked fresh. The body was twisted, blood splashed across its frame, its head at an incorrect angle. The smell of it hit me and my stomach rose in my throat. I had to look away and gather myself. I bit the inside of my cheek, closed my eyes, and counted backwards from 10. When I said 0, I opened my eyes and that's when I saw it. The deer was moving. No, not the deer, it was still unmoving, but its skin pulsed, like a wave was underneath it, trying to break out. I stepped backward and stared. Was that a twitch? I wondered. The body moves after death sometimes, doesn't it? I took a long look at the deer. Nothing. No movement at all. Just roadkill. Involuntary twitch, I decided. Nothing else. I bent down and slid my shovel under it. It leapt. I screamed and dropped it back on the ground. I scrambled backward, only stopping when I hit the front of Grant's truck. My chest was heaving up and down and my knees were weak, rubbery. The dead thing was frozen, slumped on the ground. I pulled out my phone and called Grant.
Josh, how you doing?
What the fuck is wrong with this deer, man? I came in real hot, screaming, starting at 11 out of 10.
What are you talking about? How am I supposed to know what the fuck is wrong with the deer when I'm not even there to see the damn bastard in the first place?
It's moving, man. I was pacing around, giving it a wide berth. It's moving.
Are you sure it's dead?
I stopped and let the phone down, stared at the body for a second and then nodded, brought the phone back up. Yeah, it's dead. Dead as hell. You think I'm an idiot?
Usually dead things don't move.
I'll call you back on FaceTime. Show it to you. I called him back and flipped the screen to the corpse.
It's not moving.
I know, now it's not. But it moved when I picked it up.
Put the phone down somewhere so I can watch your stupid ass pick it up again.
I put the phone on the ground, propped up against a rock. The deer was where I had dropped it. I bent down, my heart thudding. The woods seemed to have gone silent, and the breeze had died.
Pick it up!
Grant shouted. I'm about to. I held back. Deep breath. I touched the animal. I swear I felt the warmth of it through my thick-ass work gloves. I didn't move until Grant yelled again. I grunted and lifted it up. Deer weigh about 130 pounds. You have to support them somewhat against your body. I had this pile of bone and skin and fur in my arms, and Grant was shouting at me, and I was trying not to breathe deer guts and plasma getting on my shirt and arms. And there was no movement. Just something dead. But there were flies all of a sudden. Way too many fucking flies that hadn't been there before. Like an army of buzzing, but over them I could hear Grant shouting, telling me nothing was wrong with the goddamn deer and he had to go back to work. He was right. Nothing was wrong. Something had been, but not now. I threw the deer in the bed of the truck and drove off to the dump site. The usual place was pretty close, just a few miles out of town. But as I started the truck up, I got a text. It said there was a new location for the dump site. The address it sent me was in a different direction, to the west, out past the new target where the new developments were. The subdivisions and fake-ass mansions where everybody drove SUVs and all their kids bought drugs off dudes like me. This address was beyond that. The old woods, where nobody had ever built anything ever. All hills and trees and twisting roads, a driveway every 10 miles with houses invisible from the street. My GPS told me to turn up one of those dead-looking driveways and keep going. When I finally stopped, I was in front of an old cabin. It looked like nobody had used it in years. Mold was thick on the roof and one of the windows was broken. In the backyard, I saw a rusted old pole with strings tied around it. It looked abandoned, like everything else there. I honked the horn and parked. I still wasn't okay with whatever happened, but I was trying not to think about it. A fire was burning in a pit behind the cabin. Somebody must be there, at least. The smoke of it hit me when I stepped outside. Birds were screaming in the trees. "Hey, anybody here? I got a deer for you guys." No response. I looked back to the back of the truck. The deer was still there. I don't know where I thought it could have gone. The flies from before still seemed to be there, swarming all over. A thick cloud. They swarmed all over the truck like a cloud. All I could hear was a low buzzing. Some hit my face, one got in my mouth, and I spat it out disgusted. There were so many flies I couldn't see the deer for a second, which I guess explained what happened next. You know those photos that look one way, but you put a transparent colored piece on top of it, it turns into another picture? It was like the flies were the paper on top of the deer. Before them, the deer was a dead doe. After the flies swarmed, the deer had horns and its eyes were wide open. The thing opened its mouth and its teeth weren't flat and round, the white tic-tacs of animals that don't eat meat. No, they were sharp and violent, and ready to bite. I staggered back, closed my eyes. The buzzing was in my ears. I felt tiny hairy insects all over me. I slapped blindly at the flies and kept my mouth closed, even though I wanted to scream. Then the noise stopped. I opened my eyes. The flies were gone. I stepped forward and looked into the cab. In there, the deer was dead again. Its horns were gone. Get in the truck, I thought. Get in the truck and drive the fuck away. Never come back. But first, throw the goddamn deer out. I reached in and grabbed the deer. Its skin was warm and soft. It moved under my hand. My stomach twitched, but I gritted my teeth. As soon as you get it out, then throw up, I told myself. Don't throw up in the middle. Makes things way too complicated. I pulled the deer to me, smelled its sweet, sick death cologne, lifted it and turned around. In front of me, 50 or 60 deer stood 20 feet away from me. Their eyes glowed in the noon light. Bright, weird eyes. Not the black I expected, but silver instead. Like quarters had been polished and shoved in their eye sockets. Their brown bodies stood against each other like they were a strange, living wall. I closed my eyes, but this time when I opened them back up, they were still there. They opened their mouths, and all I could see were razor-sharp points where their teeth should be. "Bring the body," a voice said. I looked but didn't see anyone. "Bring it to the fire." The voice sounded strange, wrong. A recording slowed down. Someone who didn't speak English reading words they had never said. Maybe something that couldn't speak had said it. There was a space between the deer, like a path almost. It led straight to the fire pit. I began to walk through. I felt their eyes on me. I heard them breathing. It didn't sound like I thought it would sound. The fire pit was surrounded by smooth white stones that seemed to shiver from the waves of heat. The closer I got, the hotter it was. Sweat soaked through my shirt. The weight of the deer pressed against me, and the heat of the pit and the heat of its body. Why was it hot? I thought, isn't it dead? Was it? I swear I could feel it move. I felt sick again. Waves of nausea, but I knew I couldn't stop. I had to do this. I lifted the deer over my head. All the sounds of the woods stopped. I threw it in. When the deer hit the fire, I heard them start to scream. I dropped to my knees and covered my ears, not moving, trying not to hear the awful screeching. It sounded like machines being run all wrong. Their engines had been disassembled and put back together backwards, and then everything was turned up to high. Everything was high-pitched and so painful. In the middle of all the noise, I heard my name. My eyes had been closed, but I opened them. I was staring right at the deer on the altar as the fire tore it apart. Its mouth was open, and I swear it was saying my name. Then the flames got worse, and the smell of burning skin got too bad. I started to cough, and when I could see again, the flames were even higher, and the deer was only a skeleton. I turned around, and all the deer were gone. I staggered to the truck and crawled into the seat. I kept squeezing the steering wheel and looking into the rearview mirror. Just smoke and woods, trees fucking everywhere. I drove off, shaky at first, but I kept accelerating. I was 20 miles over the speed limit when I saw the sign for a liquor store. I hit the brakes and went in, got a bottle of their cheapest vodka, and started drinking before we even got back to Grant's place. The next day, hungover, I called the county and had them take me off the roadkill list. They said sure, but asked me why I hadn't taken the deer in yesterday. I told them I took it to a news site. I didn't say anything else about what had happened. My head was pounding and my throat tasted like metal. I had dreams all night about things in the woods. Houses on fire. Dead things that weren't all the way dead. That's when they told me there was no news site. Same place as always. "Where did you take it, man?" they asked me. I hung up the phone, and in the static of the dead line, I swear I could hear the endless screaming of the deer. Thank you for listening, and remember, no matter what eldritch horrors you might witness, do not drink and drive. Many thanks to Lucid Lupus for voicing Grant and the scary deer thing, as well as showing me that my audio was terrible and ruining and saving my whole life. You should go check him out. He tells stories good. And of course, you can handle another horror story, right?